What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about data visualization in Python. It's a quick one. I'm just going to go through how to create a line plot. And I've got a data set called City Weather 2019. It's a CSV, and I'm going to go ahead and load this up. And just print out the first 10 rows, and then we are going to go ahead and start plotting. So this data set contains 4 temperatures per day for every day of the year in 2019 for 2 different cities. It's Birmingham, Alabama, and Cleveland, Ohio. And as you can see, you've got the city name, the weekday, the date, and then temp low, time, temp high. So there are 4 different time points during the day, and I think it's 12 a.m., 6 a.m., 12 p.m., and 6 p.m. And for each of those time points, there's a low and a high temperature, and then you see we have a bunch of these NaN columns. And so what I'm going to do is just clean up this data set a bit, and then we will go ahead and plot. So the first thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and shorten this down. So I'm going to say my data is equal to my data, and then I am going to go ahead and shorten it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the high temperatures, and I'm going to create a new column that is the average of all of those, and then I'm going to plot basically average temperature per day for both cities as a line plot, so we can see if maybe one is higher than the other across the year. And so for that, what we're going to need is the column city. We will also need the date, and then we'll need all of the temp high columns. So we have 4 of these, and I believe they're called temp high 1. And then I'm just going to copy this, paste it. That's 2, 3, and 4. And we'll change these out. Oops, this should be 2 and this should be 3. All right, and then the next thing that we'll need to do is create a new column, and we're going to call this temp high average. Okay, and temp high average is going to be really I'm going to maybe take the long way around this, but what I'm going to do is I'll take all of my temp highs, so I'll say my data temp high 1, and let's speed this up. So we're just going to sum all of these. That would be 2, 3, and 4. So we'll change this. So 4, 3, and 2. And then we will just divide that sum by 4, so that'll give us the average. Yeah, and I think that should be enough, and then we can go ahead and actually plot this and then take a look at how see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and actually plot this. So to plot, it's gonna be real easy. We'll say plt is dot plot. By the way, I'm using the pandas library and the matplotlib library. So in pandas, we can just call in a plot like this. So pandas or plt dot plot. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pass in my data. So the x is going to be our date. So that's the date column. And we're going to plot the 2 cities separately. So we'll call in my data date, where my data city is equal to Birmingham. So that's going to be our x-axis. That's our date. And then we're basically going to do the same thing for a y-axis, but instead of date, we are going to call in that average temperature column that we just created. So we called that temp high average. Yep, like that. And then we can specify how we want it to look. We'll say we want this one to be like a blue line. And then I'm going to plot on top of that the data from our other city, which is not Birmingham but Cleveland. that. We change the city name over here as well. And instead of a blue line, we'll plot it as red. And then we can do some other things too. So we can say plot.title. And then inside of that, we can pass in whatever we want the title to be. So we'll say temperature. We can also do plt.xlabel. This is going to be our date. And then we can also do a y label. And that is going to be temperature in Fahrenheit. And then we'll add a legend. When you call a legend, you're going to pass in, if you've got more than one signal, which in this case we do, we're going to pass in a list. Our first one is the city of Birmingham. These are going to be in order, the order in which you called them. So we called Birmingham first, and then Cleveland. So then Cleveland will go here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and save this and run it. And this should give us a plot. Running. Oh, we've forgotten to do something here. To pop it up, we're going to do plot.show. Save that. Let's run this again. Okay, and the plot's coming up. There it is. Okay, so you can see here we've got our two lines. We've got Birmingham, we've got Cleveland. You can see the temperature. Perhaps you could have guessed this. The temperature is on average basically across the entire year higher than it is in Cleveland. But what's wrong with this is that our date looks really bad. And the reason it looks like this is probably because Python is not picking it up as a date. And if we look at our printed data up here, you can see that's because it's just Jan 1, Jan 2, Jan 3. What we need it to be is basically month, day, year, in kind of a number area. So how would we change that? Let's see. Well, let's go down here. And let's start thinking about the first thing that we'll need. Well, we'll need a year first and foremost. And so we can do that by saying my data date is equal to my data date. And then let's add 2019 to the end of the current date. So we'll say as type. Inside of that, we're going to pass in string, and then we are going to add our year. So we're going to say dash 2019. So that will add 2019. The next thing that we need to think about doing is replacing the space in between January or Jan and the actual day. That's just a space there. We want to put a dash in between that. And then we'll want to change January, February, March, whatever it is, to the actual number of the month. So the first thing is really quite easy. What we do is we just say my data date is equal to my data date. And we will just do a replace. So we'll say dot replace. And then inside of replace, we're going to pass that space in, and then we're going to pass what we want to replace it with, which is just a dash. And then we're going to say regex is equal to true. And then let's go ahead and print this to see if we're getting what we want. So we'll print my data date, and then we'll just take the first 10. So we'll save that. And then let's speed this up. Let's go ahead and comment this plotting out for right now so that it doesn't waste time pulling up this plot. So let's see what our date looks like now. It should be January dash 1 dash 2019, although we're getting this dash in the front. That means that for whatever reason there's a space in front there. So that's really easy to strip out. We can just do a left strip, but we're going to want to do that before we do these dashes so that it strips it and then adds the dash. So we will put right here my data date is equal to my data date, and then I believe we have to call string, and then we can call else strip, and we want to strip the space there. So let's save that and run that again, make sure our date looks good, and then we will replace the month names with the month numbers. So again, this should be removing this first dash here. There we have it. Yeah, okay, so there we go. So that's exactly what we were looking for. And now what we need to do is go through and replace Jan with 01, Feb with 02, so on and so forth. And that's real easy. We're going to do basically the same thing that we did here. So I'll copy that, paste it. Instead of a space, we're going to be replacing Jan with 01. And then I'm going to just copy this. Copy. That's February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Hopefully I counted this right. That would be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Jan will be replaced with Feb, March, April, May, June, all right, let's save that, and now this should give us exactly the format that we're looking for. So let's make sure of that before we plot it again. There we go. So now you can see it's 01, 1. So now it's actually reading this as a date, but we still have to tell Python to read it as a date because at the moment I believe that it's reading it as a string. So to do that, we're going to say my data date is equal to pd.toDateTime, and then inside of date time we're just going to call in our column again, so my data date, and that should now tell Python, pandas, using pandas, we're telling Python treat this column as a date, and then that should clean up that x-axis on our plot down here. So we'll go ahead and plot this. So let's save, and let's clear this first, CLS, and then run that, and this should now give us a cleaner graph. And there you have it. So now you can see that that x-axis is really cleaned up. It's treating this as an actual date here. Okay, hopefully you found that useful. If you did, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be doing more of these Python, PANDAS, MATPLOTLIB, data visualization tutorials in the very near future. So stay tuned to that. You can also find me on Twitter, and then you can find me on YouTube, GitHub, LinkedIn, and ResearchGate. All right, until next time, keep coding.